Hello everyone! So today I wanted to do a review slash comparison on a few different foundations. Well, let me grab the third one because I just thought about this. I'm changing my plans. I'm going to do a kind of comparison between two different luxury cosmetics and then give you a drugstore alternative to one of those two. So that makes sense. It's almost going to be like a Venn diagram. So the two foundations I'm gonna be comparing are two of my favorites. One of them I've liked for a long time, and one of them is a pretty new kind of love. Let's see. The first one is the Chanel Vitalumiére Fluide de Teint. No, let's say English. Moisture Rich Radiance Sunscreen Fluid Makeup Broad Spectrum SPF 15. I have the shade 30 Céndre. Intensity 1.5. It's made in France. Don't know if that makes a difference. And then comparing that to the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation, and then it just says it in French. I have the shade 5.5. This one is made in France as well. French foundations. So these both come from designer fashion houses that branched out into beauty. Chanel's been doing it a little bit longer than Armani has, but they both have sort of really developed a street cred, if you will, for excellent foundations. And this one is fairly recent, and this one I've liked for a long time. As you guys know, if you watch my channel, I talk about this one all the time. This one is $55. It retails for $55 US. I purchased mine at a Macy's counter. The Armani Luminous Silk, which I have it pulled up here, $60 US. And I purchased mine at Sephora, but you can also get yours from Nordstrom or any other high-end department store, third-tier department store, like that. So let's start off with the packaging. The difference is this is in a matte glass bottle and this is in a clear glass bottle. They both have a little bit of extra glass packaging surrounding. However, it looks like the Armani is a little bit shorter. It's also round. It's more of a weird shape. It kind of comes to, it's tapered at the top a little bit more. It's wider on the top than it is the bottom, and this is just a perfect skinny rectangle. You got your Chanel on top. You got your information on the bottom, and they both have a pump. The problem I think with the difference is the Chanel one, the cap fits on, but when sometimes I pick it up by the cap and it comes uncapped, whereas the Armani doesn't really click. So when you pick it up from the top, it's a lot sturdier for whatever reason, even though it doesn't click. This cap is a lot more held on than this one, even though this has a clicking method. Both of them pump absolutely the perfect amount of product. It's not too much. You can really control how much you want to come out in one pump. They're really kind of equal in that playing field. And then when you get to really what comes inside the bottle, you are paying $5 more for this, and so what does the extra $5 cover? I have to tell you honestly right now, I think they're both really great at what they do, and it's kind of hard to say whether I'd pick one or the other because I would honestly have both, and I do like both. I think the Chanel one is a lot more luminous and a lot more kind of radiant and dewy than this one is, but this by no means whatsoever is flat or not radiant at all. I find that the Chanel tends to go a little bit farther with the amount of liquid that you get. It spreads out a little bit more, whereas the Armani, I feel like you need a little bit more product for it to kind of move around properly, if that makes sense. Not that this gives more coverage than this. They both give about, I'd say, light coverage. You could build it up to like a light medium, but I'd say just to be safe, it's about a light coverage. It's better than a tinted moisturizer, but it's definitely not a typical medium coverage liquid foundation. So, scent-wise, the Chanel one definitely has a very significant scent. You can definitely tell it's fragranced in it. It smells very Chanel, if you know what I mean. It smells like I would imagine a lot of their other products are scented. The Armani, I don't think I noticed a scent when I used it. The Armani has a similar scent. The Armani smells a little bit more like the Chanel Vitalumiére Aqua. If you smelled that one, this one smells pretty similar, I think. Shade-wise, this is a little bit dark for me, and this I think is a little bit pink. but this is what I've been matched to. Was matched to this one as well. I could probably use the 20, but I think that would be a bit light. The jump from 20 to 30 is extreme, and this goes, I think the 0.5s are the neutrals, I think. Let's see. 0.75s, I think, are the really... That's weird. I have 5.5 and it's looking really pink, and it sort of is, but for some reason it doesn't read too pink on my skin. I don't know. It's hard to say. I kind of just did it off of the Temptalia foundation matrix. I didn't really get matched, and I got this when I was in New York with Josh, or when I was shopping with Josh because I was in New York, and this one works fine for me. I don't really know what to tell you for that. Application, how I apply it, I use the same method for both. I go in with a regular foundation brush, apply it where needed, then take a buffing brush and blend it out. It's really hard to say. I mean, obviously there are differences. They're two different products by two different companies for, similar price ranges, but I think they kind of set out to do something similar, which is to give you a nice glowing radiant complexion, giving you light coverage, making your skin look naturally pretty and naturally kind of well-defined, not well-defined, but just clean and put together. So I think they do both of them really well. So, having to pick between the two, it's a little bit tricky to say. The Armani is a little bit more accessible because it is sold in Sephora. Not all Sephoras, but at least the Sephoras that I've been to in Los Angeles and Sephora Times Square, it's been available. And I think at the Galleria in Houston, it's available. Whereas Chanel's not sold at Sephora. It is it's sold at Macy's, Nordstrom, things like that. I don't know if Armani sold at Macy's. I'm not entirely sure. However, I do have to say, just diving into the companies a little bit, Chanel is privately owned, whereas Armani, I think, is owned by L'Oreal. And so Chanel really kind of doesn't have anyone to answer to, so their products tend to be pretty unique. Whereas the Armani, like the Eyes to Kill mascara is basically, L'Oreal Voluminous. It's just in better packaging and, whatever have you. And so that's another reason why I feel like, I'm not comparing it to this, but the Luminous Silk is kind of a version of True Match Lumi, or a True Match Lumi is the drugstore version of the Luminous Silk. With that being said, the drugstore version, I think, of the Chanel Vitalumiére is the Maybelline Fit Me. And I've had this for a long time, and I used this before I even tried the Chanel, and they're basically identical. The scent on the Maybelline is not as pleasant. It smells like baby wipes. Not good baby wipes either. But they're basically identical. You're going to get the same amount of coverage, the same kind of really radiant finish. It spreads out really nicely. The shades are actually really similar. They're both kind of too dark for me. But they're very similar. So it's almost like this is the drugstore version of this, and this is the drugstore version of this. And they're all sort of doing the same kind of really nice thing, which is giving you that light coverage, giving you the little bit of radiance that you want, and blending out really nicely. I'd have to say out of all of these, the one I like the least is the L'Oreal, the Lumi, and the one I like the most is probably the Chanel. Now, I might be partial because I've really had good luck with all the Chanel foundations I've tried, but I can certainly say that for the amount of money that you're going to have to pay for one of these higher end foundations, whether it be the Armani or the Chanel, I would, you're going to save $5 by getting the Chanel, and I personally, I think, like the Chanel a little bit more. Now, the benefit of the Armani is that there is a lot bigger of a shade range. Here's their website. Do you see? I don't know if you can even pick this up, but I'm going to zoom in. These are all the shades that they have. Oh, and there's more. So yeah, there's a little bit more. So that's all the shades that the Armani has. I don't know if you can see that. And when you're pulling up the Chanel one, this is how many shades the Chanel has. Limited. So with that being said, Armani is definitely great if you have a skin tone that doesn't basically fall under beige, classic beige, which there's a lot of people out there that don't, so I don't know why companies are not catching on to that. But yeah, I think all in all, they all kind of, the Chanel versus the Armani, I would personally pick the Chanel just because maybe I've had a little bit more time to play with it and figure out what works for me and really try to combine it with other things and things like that. Whereas the Armani, I think, tricky to say. I'd say the difference that I notice, and it's really minute, is that the Armani has a smidgen less of a glow than the Chanel does. And I think it also dries down a little bit more than the Chanel does. Whereas the Chanel, I feel like I really need to really buff it in for it to not kind of just sit on the surface of my skin, whereas I felt like the Armani blended in a lot more, but I also needed to work with it a lot more to get it to move around. So, I don't know how helpful this was. I hope you can kind of see where I was coming from. And like I said, if you want to try either one of these but you don't want to shell out the money, this is basically the drugstore version of Armani Luminous Silk. And this is, even though they have no relation to Chanel, this is, I think, an exact dupe for the Chanel Vitalumiére. The only reason I don't use this is because I don't like the scent, and I think it can sometimes be a little bit too shiny. I don't know, it just depends on the day, it really does. I don't know if I mentioned this either, but the Chanel has sunscreen and the Armani does not, so this one's going to photograph a lot better. So there we go. I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope it wasn't just a ramble and it wasn't just sort of stuff that I didn't make any sense at all. But I will talk to everyone later. Bye guys.